Tuesday, everybody. I am just wrestling with RSS feeds. That's an exciting start to the day. I'm trying to take a bunch of podcasts that either post good stuff about game design or indie games and aggregate them through a bot and have it spit out in our Discord server. But I've just found Soren. Sorry, Soren, I don't know your surname. Soren Jonsson's designer notes doesn't seem to have an RSS feed. It's only posted on his website and on SoundCloud. And that means I can't put it in there. So if you watch this, get an RSS feed. Publish your podcast properly. Welcome to this first stream of the week, here on a Tuesday. It's Tuesday with a CH today. And we're going to check out two disturbing games today. I've got one game that's a little bit gory. And then I've got a game that I've been warned has some sort of socially challenging material in it, because it deals with kind of dealing with horrible people in social situations. So I don't know how we're going to get on with these and how far I'm going to be able to go with them. But they're both patrons games. I wanted to show them because they've both been submitted for community playtesting. And so I put them together. And this stream is themed around the games being disturbing. But they're not necessarily going to be disturbing in the same way. Because the first game we're looking at, Flesh Grinding, is like a horror incremental that is gory. And then the second one, Who's Afraid of Uno, is quite an interesting looking surreal social game about dealing with rude, horrible people. So they're disturbing in different ways. We're going to have some gore first. We're going to have some sort of classic horror stuff. I'm very interested in this. I have a love-hate relationship with incremental games. And I think it's very similar to a lot of the conversations we've had on streams recently about story. It's not that I dislike story. I think that's a thing that's often done badly. I think that now that, we have a couple of recent successes with prominent YouTubers and so on making incremental games, the incremental game space is going to get just gradually worse over the next 6 to 12 months. Because whenever anyone says, I had success with this, they're easy to make, loads of people rush to go and make that game. And it's not because they like that type of game or they think they have something special to contribute. It's because they're looking for the special print money button. And that means that incremental games are just going to get flooded with trash. So I'm always interested to see people do interesting stuff with this. It's always been an interesting genre. I'm going to stop saying the word interesting over and over again. But, when I think of incremental games, the sort of ones that stick out in my memory are things like, if you've ever played A Dark Room, which is like a puzzle box game where you start off just lighting a fire and gathering wood. And then as you go on, the game just unfolds into loads of different modes and stuff. And to me, that's what's cool about the incremental game genre. Not, you can just whack an interface together and stick some buttons in it and way you've got a game. So very interested to see Flesh Grinding because it's a cool mix of a particular kind of art style and theming and a type of a game genre that can often be somewhat without riz or swag, being done in a very cool looking stylized way. Hey Kyle, thanks for joining. Yeah, I know I stream at awkward times. It is the being a British person who has children thing makes it very hard to stream at US friendly times. So yeah, we're going to check this out and then we're going to check out Who's Afraid of Uno. And the disturbing thing about Who's Afraid of Uno is it's going to kind of contain some sort of horrible characters that are bigots and stuff like that. So we'll see where we get to with that, because I think the main thing will be if the characters are that horrible, I'm not going to read out their text. That's my kind of line that I draw there. I think you can have horrible characters in games because you're trying to make a comment about them, but I would draw the line at necessarily having to read out any slurs or anything like that. It's too early on a Tuesday for sitting here reading out slurs on a stream. So yeah, let's get going. Let's get going on the flesh grinding playtest. I've been playing past couple of days. I've been playing Loop Hero on my phone for some reason, which is going to completely destroy my eyesight if I play it for much longer. I've been playing Ball Times Pit as well, which I never got around to playing, but is one of those games I kind of admire mechanically, but I feel like is probably a waste of my time. That's kind of what I've been up to in the past couple of days outside of the channel. There's only American English. Any hot takes on non-casual games on mobile? Not really, no. I just hate playing action games on a touchscreen. That's my main thing about it. Which isn't a very interesting take, but I tried to play Ball Times Pit on mobile. I played the demo on there. And I was like, I hate virtual joysticks. Turn-based games on mobile, great. The lag you are witnessing is the engine starting up. It seems to have been okay now. Okay. Yeah, it was the engine loading up was making the mic lag out. Save file. Very interesting that the progress metrics on the save file are in milliliters and kilograms. Anyone who actually enjoys playing games with a virtual joystick on a touchscreen is a pervert. There, I've said it. I've picked up some meat. Do I put it in there? That looks like something I want to throw some meat in. Oh, I think that's my meat grinder, but I think it's broken. Anyone who enjoys playing games on virtual joysticks on a touchscreen should be buried in sand on the beach. Just at the right height, so that when the tide comes in, it just goes below the line of their mouth. Just here. I don't wish genuine harm on them. I'm not saying they should be drowned. But I'm saying they should be buried in sand for several hours until the water comes just up to here. There's several hours of kind of quite unpleasant experience just to show them the error of their ways. And then maybe they'll think, yeah, I shouldn't have played that game on a touchscreen using virtual joysticks. And I shouldn't encourage developers to do that. That's the main problem. You know, you can like whatever you want to like. We don't kink shame here. within reason. We don't kink shame. You can like the virtual joysticks, but what you shouldn't do is anything that encourages developers to put the virtual joysticks in the first place. Okay, so we've got a picking up mechanic for bits of meat. I'm walking around with a drip on, which is interesting. Is that my drip, or is that are you grandma? Is this your drip? What are you reading? I am waiting for you. Follow the flowers, follow the eye. I want to watch your dreams. I love you. Omel. Go back to work. This aesthetic is such a vibe. It's very, very evocative. So this drip is running out. This drip on the left is a timer. I'm guessing I'm supposed to work out. I'm supposed to do a certain amount of stuff in that time. So maybe I'm supposed to manually grind the meat. So I put it in this. I'm guessing that's like an automation station for later on. But for now, we're just going to have to grind meat the old-fashioned way. Well, I think the thing that I like about it visually is that it feels disgusting, right? There's something about this aesthetic that it's kind of like with old school sort of late 70s, early 80s exploitation films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? If you make Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you make it look too cleaned and polished, you're taking away some of the horror, because the lo-fi-ness of it is what makes it feel kind of naughty and dirty to watch, right? So any of those films, like those old grindhouse films like Driller Killer and stuff like that, like the low budgetness of them, and trauma movies like Toxic Avenger, the low budgetness of them is part of what gives them their kind of naughty aura. And then when you're watching them when you're a teenager, you're like, oh, I shouldn't be watching this because it feels dirty, right? And that's kind of what this aesthetic achieves for me, is the sort of the illicitness of it being a horror game, or a game with some sort of like edgy, dark element. When I look at this aesthetic and I say this looks great, I wouldn't necessarily think this was great in any context, but as a piece of creative direction in a game that is trying to make you feel grubby and dirty, which is kind of clearly what it's going for, it works fantastically. And you can kind of see a through line there with, you know, certain 90s edgy, dark action games like Quake and stuff, right? There's a reason why Quake has a Nine Inch Nails soundtrack and the Nine Inch Nails logo on the ammunition things. It's kind of all tying into that same sort of industrial goth type thing that makes the thing feel a little bit kind of naughty, dark, BDSM adjacent, all of those kind of things. Yeah, we're getting somewhere. That's a valid point. So the save file was in milliliters, and then the hospital drip is in ounces. I think they might have done that deliberately to disambiguate, because I think the milliliters you can actually see. Sorry, I just need to shuffle the screen around. Up in the top right there, you can see 2 milliliters, which I think is how much blood I've produced by grinding the meat so far. So I think they've deliberately used metric for the scoring mechanism, and that's why we have Imperial used for the time mechanism so that you don't get confused between what a milliliter is. So I think there's a deliberate choice that's been made there. British people are completely inconsistent with what measurements we use. I know Americans think that we use metric for everything, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. And actually there's a kind of... Basically, there's a strong association with metric being like the official measurement for things, but there is also a kind of cultural conservative desire to go back to using imperial things as well. So the rejection of metric is sort of tied in with your Nigel Farages and all of that kind of stuff a little bit. And generally, we just are completely inconsistent in terms of how we measure things. How do we feel on the day? Yeah. How European do I feel? Oh, sacre bleu. It's 20 kilometers. I don't know anyone that measures distance. Well, actually, people seem to measure runs. When they do running, they tend to measure it in kilometers. Driving, miles. But I guess all the speed limits and stuff are still in miles per hour as well, so it would be confusing to use kilometers for measuring distance in cars. I've worked myself to exhaustion. So the grinding doesn't do anything when the drip is all the way down, so I need to go back and see my grandma. There are 2 doors in here. Can I go through the other one? Follow the flowers, follow the eye. Okay. I'm giving some real sort of Dahlia Gillespie vibes over here. Look at that. Look at that. That's great. America has quantum pints. Amazing. So one thing I would say about this from a pure game design point of view, because I'm enjoying everything from a vibes and creative direction point of view, but it feels a little bit inconsistent that you know, when we're processing the resources of putting the meat in the grinder, it's very physical. And you know, it's very physical, kind of ImSim object-oriented stuff where the object picks up and you pick the object up and put it down. But when we get the blood from the grinding, it's just like a arcade pickup and it goes directly into some imaginary inventory. I feel like if I was picking the bottles of blood up and dispensing them somewhere, then it would create a slightly more interesting decision point, because you can either crush 2 things and then move the blood, or you can like do them one by one, you know. This is definitely a bit too long until the game kind of changes or anything happens, though. I was told follow the flowers, follow the eye. So we've got to kind of... I mean, we've already been set up with the Grandma's book to sort of perceive this as a little bit of a puzzle as well, of like, how do we speed up the process? How do we make the incremental game faster? So maybe there's a way to get that working. And I would like to think it doesn't just arbitrarily work after we've collected a certain amount of blood, because that's going to feel like a cop-out. Because this is such a grungy, industrial-looking place that I would expect it to have some sort of slightly realistic reason for fixing that machine. But if it's just going to be, oh, you've got 10 milliliters of blood, now this machine works, then I'm going to be a bit disappointed, I think. Because the set dressing is setting me up to expect a particular type of thing. And look. I'm a Cronenberg guy. I love a bit of biomechanical nonsense, but I think if you're setting this up to look like a kind of grindhouse movie in a factory, then the machine needs to work like a machine. It starts to change at 1.1 kilo. Okay. Yeah, I think it is probably a little bit too cryptic. Because the other thing is we can't... We don't have a clear way of seeing how close we are to getting anything out of doing this. So it's going to lose a lot of people very, very quickly. Bearing in mind that the activity I'm actually doing to do this is... I mean, it would be slightly different if I was holding the wheel and like bringing it round like that, because then at least there would be something a little bit more active in what I was doing. But I am literally just holding the mouse button down on a crank to move the crank, and that means I think you need to be a little bit more respectful of people's time. Because if you're doing a node buster or a kind of game about making a black hole or any of those types of things, the activity that you're doing to make number go up is inherently pleasurable, whereas pointing the reticule at something and holding the mouse down just doesn't have enough of a kind of mini game feel to it to feel like it's respectful of people's time to get them to do it for 10 or 15 minutes before the game changes in any way. So when the transfusion pack gets to 0, I can't turn the crank anymore. I can, but it doesn't do anything. I think it's okay to have the upgrades hidden, especially in one like this that's supposed to be like a puzzle box, like a dark room, but here we go. Blood for flesh. Each flesh sacrifice yields a greater amount of blood. Okay, we can do an upgrade now. We've got some more here. This is how much they cost. That's how much I've got. Okay. Yeah, I think moving the mouse in circles to rotate the handle would help make it feel a little bit more toy-like, and people were going to stomach doing it for longer because of that. Reduces juice consumption over time. Okay, so that's going to mean we don't need to rest as frequently. Kuna, that the game about throwing things in the hole was called Out of Sight, Out of Mind, I think. Yeah, we've got some upgrades now. I think also not dropping the meat in exactly the same place every time might add a little bit more of a kind of mini game to finding it. Because if this space fills out with anything else and you drop the meat in a different place every time, then it will kind of end up behind things and you can go around and look for it as well, which is gives people more to think about. I mean, the other thing I'm finding myself... I'm only supposed to just click each time to make it work, but I'm finding myself holding it down because I want to interact with it on a more kind of physical level because it feels like that type of thing. Okay. So I don't know what's bleeping at me. Expand your energy supply so you can work for longer. We all know the rest is for the week. Okay, cool. So let's see what else we can unlock. Make the gears run faster. Okay. We need 10 mil for that. Flesh, flesh, flesh. Too impatient to wait. Your offerings now succumb to gravity with greater frequency. So that's going to be meat falls down quicker. I really like this. It's twisted. Obviously, that kind of goes without saying. But it's not so on the nose that it feels totally trite. Because the whole time I'm playing this, I'm sort of mulling over, like, what is this situation? Like, what is actually going on here? And if the game ever tells me that, it's going to do it very, very slowly. And I think that's really great for kind of mood and atmosphere. Something very sort of surreal and Silent Hill-ish about this whole setup, which I like a lot. I think with mouse grinding, you would make it so that it moves round, but you have to keep the mouse on it, and then you can have it faster or slower, but it goes at its own speed, you know? So, you basically have the interaction you have now. So what currently happens is when I click on it, it just moves a quarter of the way. Click once, I look away, and it just moves a quarter of the way round. Click again. I think the way I would make it work is... Oh, we didn't get to do 2 that time. I was too slow. Oh, hang on. Is this new? Yeah, the way I would have it work is you have to keep the reticule on it to keep it moving round, but when every time you're kind of clicking on it, it moves at its own speed. So I'm holding the mouse down and hovering over it, and I have to sort of trace it round, almost like I'm doing a sort of hook the wire game. And that way, when you get the upgrade to speed it up, it's actually going to make that mini game slightly harder as well. Which is, I think, a good bit of resistance to put in. Oh, there's soot down here. I don't want to click the grinder. I don't want this to be a button. I don't want this to be like an object that just does the thing when I click it. I want it to feel more physical. Because otherwise you're not fully leaning into the gross out. Like, the more that you involve the player in having to physically do the thing, firstly, they're not going to get as bored as quickly, because just clicking on the thing to activate it means that it's exactly the same physical operation for the player as just clicking on objects to pick them up or drop them. And that's not as interesting as, like, doing multiple different things with the mouse. When you're switching between clicking on something to activate it and then using the mouse to do some sort of mini game, the game is kind of more interesting and has like a varied rhythm to it. So I don't want it to be easy and friction free. I don't want to click the thing and it just does the thing. I want there to be a mini game there, and then you can actually have the upgrades gradually take away the need to do that. But also, for the type of game it is and the tone, it will just feel more grisly if the player feels more like an active participant in doing the grinding. Because you've even got grinding in the title and it just doesn't have that pushback or friction because it just does it itself. Okay, so I picked up something and brought it in here. Was it a Prezi for my... Prezi for the granny? I don't know. Okay. It says we need to get up to 20 kilos. Maybe I needed to grind the thing I picked up. It looked like a machine or a... Ah, it's part of the transformer. Okay. I thought it was something I needed to take back to Grandma. Let's go and find out. The atmosphere of this is great. Feels like the first set of upgrades hasn't been enough to make it so that we can actually grind two things. Maybe I'm just walking around too much, but... I can't remember what game I was looking at when we were talking about this recently, but... The example for, like, balancing and stuff... we often come back to is like in an RTS or any sort of game where you're upgrading damage, the only thing the player will care about is the thing they can perceive. So like the first level of upgrading damage on something should take you from killing something in 4 hits to killing something in 3 hits or whatever, because that's what the player can perceive. They don't perceive the numbers, they perceive like the thing they experience as they play. I think we might have enough time to do 2 of these, but not 3. So the first set of upgrades feels a little bit kind of ineffectual, but we got loads of resource out of it. Let's see if we can purchase anything now. Yeah, I'm not talking about making it losable. I'm just talking about giving it a little bit of friction so that you have to keep doing the thing. There's a world of design space between a mini game that you can lose and an automatic action. I'm just talking about making the action always progress towards completing, but the player needs to follow the thing with the reticle or do something a little bit more active. It doesn't have to be that thing, but just feels a little bit like I'm not that involved, and that's a missed opportunity given the theme of the game. Double the friction, double the progress. Okay, faster grinding, that's good. KP's off to get the jab. Kitten, this is how the jab is made. Didn't you know? This is how it's made. Right, and next we're going to get the upgrade that automatically picks up the blood. As you do. Keep looking around for other doors that might have opened. But I think that's going to happen when we meet the next flesh threshold. Or fleshhold, if you will. I really like the timer being this drip that the character is on, because it ties into the kind of gross body horror of the whole game. But it also feels kind of makes the game feel sad, because it's like, well, if I need to be on a drip, why am I doing this horrible manual labor? It's got these kind of multiple layers to it, and I think one of the things that makes horror feel mature, particularly in video games where there's a lot of kind of trash horror aimed at sort of 12, 13-year-olds, like your Five Nights at Freddy's and your anything where you get chased by a clown, is I think adult horror often has some sort of kind of sadness to it. You know, it doesn't have to, you know, it can be just kind of ridiculous gore everywhere and chainsaws, and that's the type of horror you laugh at, right? And I think I had an interaction with someone recently where they were saying, oh, this horror movie was so bad I laughed all the way through. It's like, I think if you think that laughing is an inappropriate way to engage with horror fiction, then you're not a real horror fan. Because people that grew up watching like Romero zombie movies and like The Living Dead, not The Living Dead, Evil Dead, stuff like that. We watch that stuff because it's funny and it makes us laugh. And so there are different modes of humor. I think like body horror is often more on that side of things, of like it's gross out, it's meant to make you laugh. But also when you go down the route of like ghost fiction and stuff like that, there's often like a sadness to it, and there's something quite tragic about the player character being in this situation and using a drip as a timer. It makes you kind of ask questions about like what is going on in this world. It feels like something is happening that is not just, it just has a slight more kind of complex flavor to it than if it was just I'm the meat man, I grind up the meat. It's like, I'm the meat man, I grind up the meat. Also, I'm working for an old lady who is my grandma or something, and also I seem to be ill or disabled in some way. And I don't think the game's going to explain that. I think it's done purely as a kind of thematic way of having this timer. But it feels very effective in making the thing feel a little bit more grown up, and like it has some sort of subtext. The great thing about subtext is you don't need to and you shouldn't explain it in the text. That's why it's subtext. It's just something for people to think about. Is it Brain Dead, the early Peter Jackson zombie movie? The scene with the ear in the custard in Brain Dead is one of the most revolting things in any film. Like, I often find like food relating things way grosser than gore related things. So if you mix gore and food together, it's like bleh. See you later, Devil House. We'll see how far we get. I'm going to give it another kind of 20, 25 minutes or so. Yeah, I think the way the loop revolves of like going in and out of that door is going to get a little bit tedious as well. I don't think I've ever seen Bad Taste. I've only seen Brain Dead. Oh man, I love the bone gun in Existence is one of my favorite things ever. So, I have a theory about why people can't abide a non-heroic protagonist. And what? Well, I have several theories about it. So one is that around about the time that Harry Potter came out, before Harry Potter, we'd had young adult fiction for quite a while. You know, like fantasy and horror and stuff that was written with young adults in mind. And in the 2000s, you really started to get a lot of folks where they never grew out of it. And it became like a thing that was like their main thing they were interested in for the rest of their life. And that's fine. I'm not like judging people who are, you know, maybe I'm judging people who are into Harry Potter, but people that continue to enjoy young adult fiction as adults is totally fine. But one of the things about young adult fiction is it's often quite moralistic and instructional, and it's kind of telling you, you know, the hero is here to show you how to be. You know, they're an idealized hero, and maybe they're flawed in some way, but they're going to get better over the course of the story. So even in like, you know, Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea, you have a flawed hero who is there to sort of present a model of like, here's what happens when young men go the wrong way, and here's what they need to do to try and fix it. Right? And the problem with reading or watching that kind of stuff for your entire life is it's aimed at very young people who are still kind of forming their idea of the moral world. And, you know, it's supposed to be like a simplified thing because it's morally instructional. And then I think the other thing that's happened, and like, I'm not the person to be the there are too many humanities degrees guy, right? I think people should go and study whatever they're interested in. But I do think what happened is we got loads of people who sort of studied media or literature or something and went off and became critics. And if you go back to, I don't know, even if you go back to like feminist frequency, right? We think of a games example. The amount of people that was so upset about what Anita Sarkeesian was saying about games, even though it was very middle of the road, like film studies type feminist criticism. It wasn't, for anyone who'd been to like college and done media studies or film, it was really not shocking or offensive to gamers, any of the stuff that Anita Sarkeesian had to say about games. Some of it was like, okay, you're making a bit of a logical leap there. This thing in video games isn't necessarily why Japan needs segregated trains to stop sexual harassment, which is the kind of thing that she would occasionally do. But generally speaking, the arguments that were being made about the pieces of media themselves were perfectly reasonable things that anyone who had been in a university in the last 20 years would have heard, right? But you saw the reaction from people was like, I can't believe you're saying this is terrible. And that's because there's a gulf between like what it means to actually do criticism and what the audience what the general audience thinks criticism is for. And a lot of people, when they go to watch like an essay or read an article about, is this game doing a good or bad thing with the way it does representation or whatever, they're not really looking to intellectually engage with those theories about horror or feminism or race or whatever it is that the critic is trying to talk about. They're there to find out if their media consumption makes them good or bad, right? So you got like loads and loads of people come out of college with degrees that equip them to do criticism of film or media or whatever, but then the audience for that material, the majority of the audience for that material, isn't really there to learn or think about those things. They just want to know if the thing that they are watching or playing makes them a good or bad person, right? It gets individualized. So you might watch a horror film and criticize it for having certain types of ideology in it, and then 90% of the people who hear that criticism are going to basically decide to translate that in their brain as saying like, oh, you're saying I'm a bad person because I liked this thing. Because it requires a lot of, a certain degree of like emotional and intellectual maturity to be able to criticize something you like and say it's bad in certain ways, but liking it doesn't make you a bad person. But the people that are going to that stuff, if you think about like how it appeals to them in the first place, people basically just want to watch a video essay on Dark Souls or Get Out or Euphoria or whatever it is, and have, if they like that thing, they want the critic to just basically tell them, you like this thing and here's how that makes you clever and a good person. They don't really want to engage with anything that troubles their enjoyment of the thing. And I think that's part of the reason why people, and I don't really want to make it a generational thing. You could say this is a Zoomer thing or a Gen Alpha thing. I don't think it is. I think people that don't have some sort of training in how to analyze media, whoever they are, whatever age the group they're from, tend to get upset at the notion that something they like has bad ideology in it. And that is why you get these people that cannot stand a piece of media that has a protagonist that isn't a hero. Because it's like, well, the role of the protagonist is to show me how to act. And it's like, well, no, not really. Like, the role of the protagonist is to show you how to act if you're watching something made for children, or if you're watching something made for teenagers with a particular goal behind that, which is what's happening with Earthsea or Harry Potter or any of those sorts of things. But adult media isn't made to say, oh, this is moral instruction and the protagonist in this is automatically the good guy and how you should act. There's obviously a separate sub-debate of like, okay, when you get antisocial anti-heroes like Scarface, even if they get a comeuppance at the end of the movie, is the enjoyment of the movie still not actually seeing someone enjoy having loads of cocaine and be a bastard? Which arguably kind of is. You know, it's the Fight Club problem as well. Okay, what does that do? We can grind more stuff. We'll get some more energy as well. I've only ever seen the first Cube. I do like Cube though, it's a great film. Just going to jump back in the chat and see what people are saying. Alex said, what would you say to the people who think the universities have also jumped the shark over the last 20 years? I mean, I don't really know what you would mean by jump the shark. Ah, we've got 2 grinders now. I mean, I think the trend of having a bunch of stories like Cruella and the Joker one, where they explain where the villain came from, is very sort of emblematic of just having a society where we're getting a little bit more aware of, you know, the kind of cliche that hurt people and stuff like that. I don't think it's necessarily you can see how someone who's very conservative and just wants like evil characters to just be there to give the good people something to push against. Like I noticed this when my kids were small, and I talked to them or their friends about some cartoon they were watching, and I'd ask them who the bad guy was, and often, like someone was just saying in the chat, like the example of you know, the bad guys in Power Rangers aren't allowed to do anything bad. But I'd ask the kids when they were like 4 or 5, like, how do you know that they're the bad guy? And they'd say, well, they look like this, and it's like, okay, but what have they done that's bad? What have they done that's actually bad that makes them the bad guy? And often they wouldn't be able to tell you, because in the stuff that's aimed at very small kids, they don't even show you. So it's just like, well, they're the bad guy because they have angry eyes and they go mwahahaha, and it's just a set of signifiers rather than like teaching you to judge that the person is bad because they did a bad thing, because they don't want to show you the bad thing, which is kind of reasonable with smaller kids, I guess. But and then, you know, with stuff for more mature people, I guess we focus a little bit more on how people get that way. Yeah, I would like a little bit more juggling early on. I think there's lots of little things that you could do with the core mechanics here that don't require like extra stuff, but would make the game just more interesting. Even just having to look around, because the meat is coming out of this pipe, right? But if there was several drop points in that pipe and we had to like run around the space a little bit, even just that would create a kind of mini game of looking for the thing. And obviously, going into a room multiple times and looking for a thing in a randomized position in the room is not inherently interesting, but when you make it one mini game in a set of them, it can kind of add up over time, I think. I'm trying to think about a response to Alex's question. So what happened in the UK, this is my understanding as someone who's worked in academia and was kind of around throughout this. What happened in the UK is Tony Blair had a sort of policy of trying to get more people to go to university in general. And the percentage of the population going through university in the UK went up. And then they sort of partially privatized universities, so they have, you know, their own fees and they pay for themselves and everything, but then they have a cap on how much they can charge and all of that kind of stuff. But the issue that I sort of saw from the inside was that when you're not let's say you're like a parent of a kid who's thinking of going to university, and like you're the first generation where someone has gone to university. There's been a lot of folks like that in the last sort of 30 years. You kind of see university as being like an extension of the school system, and they're like working under all the same rules and everything, but it's not really. It's its own separate thing, and it's a lot of it is kind of run like a private business. So you kind of assume that if your kid gets a place, they're going to be able to access everything, and they're going to be like kind of good enough for that course and all that kind of stuff. But because the universities are incentivized to take as many students as they can for the tuition fees, you'll often find some places, I would say, you know, if you look at the bottom, I don't know, majority percentage, like 60% of the league table for any given subject, a lot of those universities won't really have any real entry requirements. And that means that you might have a course where it's set up by a professional in a particular field, you know, like a nursing course that's set up by someone who's been working in healthcare for 20 years, or a graphic design course or a film course, and they're all set up by professionals in their field with the goal of like, how do we take these 18-year-olds, usually, sometimes mature students, and like mold them into people who are ready for work. But because these are basically private profit-making institutions, they just want as much tuition fee income as they can get, and that means that they're not incentivized to have real entry requirements. Now, the top of the league table for any given subject might be a little bit more prestigious, and they might care a little bit more, so they might actually have genuine like requirements. But there are going to be lots of cases, and I'm just saying that this is a product of the system. It's not necessarily something that I can give you specific places and say this is what happens in this place or this is what happens in that place. But the system kind of incentivizes this type of behavior. We also have an issue with like what type of courses you can do in order to get to university in the first place, because it used to just be A-levels, and now it includes stuff like BTECs, which are supposed to be like vocational courses that you do at work or as you go into work, but over time they've been turned into something more academic. It's really complex, and I can't even start to think about how things work in the States or somewhere like that, because it's just a completely different system. Yeah, there was a scandal a couple of years ago in the UK with a couple of universities where they were just like, had basically been accused of not checking if students who applied were even intending to come. So you'd get students who applied so that they could get the loan for the tuition fees and the student finance for like living and stuff, not go to university, just get into that debt that they will probably never repay, because you only repay it when you're earning like 35 grand or whatever it is now. And then the university would get the tuition fees. And obviously, to prevent that happening and being like a form of corruption, the university needs to have measures in place to ensure that students are actually going to go on the course. And there were a number of universities that got kind of accused of not doing it enough to curtail that as well. Yeah, what a perfect topic to discuss while we grind the meat. I was talking to a friend yesterday who kind of makes digital courses, and was talking to me about it and trying to get me involved in something, and I was saying I never want to be involved in any kind of like selling expensive educational products to people who I haven't had a chance to test first. And one of the things I really don't like about that model of like YouTubers funneling people into buying a course off of them is you have no way of checking if someone can access that course before they buy it off of you. So it's the same sort of problem. That's all right. Let the bot have its fun. It's a reasonably quiet bot. Good game. Have fun, bot. Yeah, so I think as we wrap this playtest up, I've been talking about lots of other things, but I think this would be quite boring if I wasn't like streaming and talking about something else, because it just doesn't change enough. And the thing is, I'm not the audience for like a very straight down the line, incremental, like a game about feeding a black hole or a game about making a planet or anything like that. I feel like, and this isn't like I'm not slagging off the developers in this case, but when I play those types of games, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Those no-buster type things, they just feel like a life drain. I'm not kind of learning a skill. I'm not unlocking some sort of mystery. They are purely like, it's like a pure kind of fidget cube type experience. And when I play games that make me feel that way, I think, oh, I'd really rather be reading a book or learning guitar or something right now, because I'm not learning a skill. And that's what I play games for, you know, learning a skill, discovering a mystery, making some sort of judgment about a world or whatever. I feel like I am the audience for this type of incremental, which is more like the kind of dark room, puzzle box, gradually unlocking type thing. But the problem is, in this first hour, just nothing really changes in any interesting way. We got this open. I got a part for this. That was a cool moment because we got to go down here and it was all kind of creepy and we have to go down the stairs, and there's some good horror level design here of like having to go down here. Oh, hang on, something new is here. That's good. Uh-oh. But I think you really want a bit of kind of orthogonal design where the grinding machine changes more rapidly and, you know, stuff in the location moves around and the meat drops down in different places. It just kind of feels a little bit too much like a standard clicker incremental with a gory theme put on top. And I think the gory theme and the kind of mysterious situation is really fertile ground to do something much more interesting. But you've got to like push the boat out a little bit with, you know, how early the game changes and how rapidly things in the game change, I think. Shivanj, I'm not really a person to ask kind of technical art questions to. I don't really have a... It's not the sort of thing that I'm a good person to ask those sorts of things. So I'm just going to go and see what that thing was that we picked up. I mean, you do need... I mean, the main thing I would say is you do need to test games on different screen sizes. You know, if you're working on a big screen, test it on a laptop, all of that kind of stuff. But as for how to keep it uniform, I don't know. More blood per sacrifice. Flesh, flesh, flesh. Too impatient to wait. Your offerings now succumb to gravity with greater frequency. Ah. There's a little bit of a UX problem here where you can zoom in and out, but it wasn't immediately obvious. Amplified blood magic. Extends your blood magic radius. That just pulls the blood in automatically. Yeah, I think ultra-wide people need to just play in a window and shut the hell up. Slows down the decay rate of your juice. Buy yourself more time before total depletion. Yeah, there's lots of these upgrades that are basically the same thing, like having more maximum juice, slowing down how quickly it depletes. There's just lots of kind of very small upgrades that don't have a drastic change. A divine apparatus that... Oh... I want to see what that does. The miracle machine. Okay, we're going to play for a little bit longer because I want to get the miracle machine. You know what? I can almost guarantee... Well, no, I can't. But I have a strong feeling that the people that complain about games not having an ultra-wide mode do not get listened to at all by relatively experienced developers or big publishers. I think the whole "are you going to make it work on ultra-wide" thing is like one person in 10,000 complaining and more sort of inexperienced developers listening to them when they shouldn't. Because I think if those people are reasonable people, they will know that games are not made to be played on that shape of screen. Right? It's not a resolution thing, it's like a totally different shape. They've bought a particular type of screen to do a particular type of thing on, and by saying, why doesn't your game work with ultra-wide, they are basically showing a degree of, like, unreasonableness about what that piece of technology is for. And anyone who has an ultra-wide screen and is reasonable would play the game in a window on that screen. But, like Totally Future said, it's the first thing anyone I know with one says about my game. Yeah, that's because people who are tech fetishists don't actually care about games. They just care about how good their computer is, and they use games as an expression of that. That's why you get these people that are just like, look how good Cyberpunk runs on my PC. And then they just walk around in the game and look at stuff, and then they don't play it. They've always been like that. The video game hot rodders. Yeah, having an ultra-wide requires expecting those issues. Yeah, exactly. So I suspect that when you see all the discourse about ultra-wide support for games, it gets disproportionately listened to by us at the sort of small indie end of the spectrum. I bet if someone is like, you know, working with a publisher or a very established indie studio, they're just like, don't listen to those people. Yeah, it's funny how people who can afford expensive things tend to also be unreasonable as well, isn't it? It's interesting that. Just be like, next time someone asks you to do ultra-wide support, just be like, dude, I've got a game you can play with the ultra-wide monitor. Why don't you take it out on the golf course and hit balls with it? Because it's long enough to do that with, isn't it? And you probably feel more at home there, wouldn't you? Long monitor boy. The ultra-wide players won't give you a positive review even if you put the work in. Because they don't actually care about the game. They just care about whether you put in the extra effort to accommodate their reality. Look, I like this game. That's the review. It's currently a 7 out of 10. Maybe a 6 out of 10. It's scoring very high for vibes, but the vibes also make me think it's going to be a slightly more kind of, I don't know, like a bit more of a changing puzzle box of a game, and I think we're going to get that when we get 6 more milliliters. What are we doing in this game? Well, you can see we pick up the meat, we put it in the grinder. Yes. Okay, we're going to get the most interesting looking upgrade on the menu. Okay. A divine apparatus that their file corrupted. Okay. Let's see what it does. I wonder if that other door is ever going to do anything. Because it's just teasing me. What's the divine machine? It's not this. I think I've found a new... So we've established we don't like ultrawide users. Although it's totally fine to have an ultrawide. You just need to not insist that games work on it in the way that you would prefer. Because it's not reasonable. It's totally fine to play games on a touchscreen with a virtual joystick. But what you shouldn't do is give money to developers who make games like that, because you're encouraging them. And I had to play, I didn't have to, but my neurology forced me to try and play Ball Times Pit on an iPhone. And I thought, this should be banned under the Geneva Convention. So I think the worst type of person who could exist would be not someone who makes games for an ultra-wide touchscreen with virtual joysticks on, right? That would be the second worst person in the world. Like a developer who makes specifically ultra-wide touchscreen games where you use virtual joysticks and they're down in the bottom corners. That would be a pretty bad person. But I think the worst person in the world would be the person who encourages that person by giving them money. So yeah, we got a divine machine for 25 blood, and it's not anywhere, and it doesn't do anything, unfortunately. Maybe the divine machine was an ultra-wide monitor all along. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up on that one. It's good. I just think it needs a bit more variety. And I would like it if some of the activities you do feel a little bit more kind of just tactile, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Like turning the crank could be more tactile. Okay, who's afraid of Uno? So I put this in the Two Disturbing Games stream because it's not necessarily going to be gory, but it might be sort of socially upsetting. So I'm going to play it. I'm not necessarily going to read out all the text. If there's anything super offensive, I'm not going to be reading that stuff out. But my understanding is this is a game that's about kind of dealing with horrible people and dealing with bigots and stuff like that. So potentially cool idea. Might have some not cool content. I'm not going to like... I'm not going to like directly read it out if it's like requiring me to roleplay the type of person who, quite frankly, I see too frequently when I go outside of the house. Because I live in quite a diverse area, but that doesn't mean we don't have a lot of gammons that want there to be flags on fucking everything. Sorry, I swore. It's been building up over the last couple of hours. This game is intended for adults and contains intense themes, including housing insecurity, coercive dependency, sexual harassment, transphobia, ableism, body horror, self-harm adjacent behavior, suicidal adjacent imagery, alcohol use, verbal abuse, stalking boundary violations, violent ideation, terrorism references, murder and mutilation remains. Player discretion is advised. Click anywhere to acknowledge. Hello, you, me, your reflection here. Your stakes are high. The expectations unspoken, so I've split us in twain. Without context, you are objective. Our only hope. Click anywhere to start. So this is going to be a weird art game. It was made for a game jam. It's going to be not easy to control or anything. Yeah, it does need to be on a turbo wide screen. I think that's going to be the main problem. So, our counsellor used to plead with us. Conversation should be like a game of Uno. I never did get what she meant, but maybe it's about to click. Okay. First, we need to deal with these cards before tacking again a drink. Play or discard. What are these cards? These cards. Oh, okay. Judgment. Time to backpedal like crazy. Drink or draw. Oh, is this is a drinking bottle. It doesn't look like a drinking bottle because it's in a brown paper bag, but I'm using the arrow keys to look. Yeah, it's perverse. It's nearly as bad as virtual joysticks. You should let them have a few more drinks before kicking them out, but don't tell me. I keep you in the dark and I'm surprised to see you stumble where here's a match. Reflection. Click cards to read them. I can do better. Ending 0 out of 14. That was the ending. Okay, I draw a card. I can play Judgment or I can discard it by drinking. I see. Okay, so I draw a card and then I can play the Fool or I can discard it to get the next card. I'm going to play the Fool. Draw. The Fool, the Lovers. I don't understand. I'm going to drink. First, we need to deal with these cards before taking a drink. Play or discard. The Page of Cups, which is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Dragon. Okay, these are characters we can talk to. Who's this? Mimosa. Well, he showed us a movie once where they shot clear through a fake tit, silicone spraying all over the dance floor. He laughed at us for wincing. That's probably description enough. He doesn't seem to like it when we thank him for letting us stay here, maybe because his dad owns the place. They're named after their drinks. So we've got these really cool character portraits that look sort of like halfway between Disco Elysium and Hades characters and some Lawnmower Man stuff. They're named after their drink, but then the actual description is incredibly sort of socially realistic and doesn't fit this kind of Y2K psychedelia stuff going on, which is a really cool mix of things. Soju, he looks at us like we're a puppy on death row. It makes us want to vomit, but he's our only ride to class. He's nice enough, we guess, at least compared to the rest of our term. These disinterested platonic solids. Read the rest of our term. Those disinterested platonic solids. Despite all his favours, we don't think he knows anything about us, an ignorance we failed to reciprocate through no fault of our own. Temperance. Oh, that's not the Lovers, it's Temperance. Okay, you see, drinking with them was not only inevitable, it was necessary, expected. That's what friends do. They help each other when it matters, and they spend time together. Dearest reflection, we've bitten the bullet. I've set us up as best I could. Soju, Mimosa, each threat cancels out the other, at least in theory. Along with the time of day, nothing bad ever happens while the sun is out, right? It's a teetering defense, I know. Do your best to keep it balanced. Perhaps you should start by thanking them for coming. Thank them. Okay, so the cards have a thing that they do, and then we've got some interface up here, which is like... I don't know what these mean. We'll find out, I guess. So their descriptions haven't changed, but we are going to change them with the card actions we do, I guess. The Fool. Soju and Mimosa know of each other, but they don't know each other. They're both men, both the only people we interact with within a reasonable distance. Surely they must have something in common, right? Contrive a connection. Which I guess is what you would do if you were in a conversation with these people and trying to, like, make them be friends. The coolest Yu-Gi-Oh card. Gosh. So often when art games get sent in, I mean, the two games that we played today are both patrons games, so I was going to play them regardless. Often when people send me art games through the main sort of indiegameclinic.com form, and by an art game, I mean a game that is predominantly meant to, you know, express something. It's not necessarily there to be entertaining or even to be accessible. And like someone said, the italics make this hard to read. There's lots of things here that are a dyslexic's nightmare. But because of the type of game it is, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't care. This is what I made. And often I don't play them when they're sent in through the mainstream because it's like, I don't know how to give them design feedback. What I can give feedback on the kind of artistic side of it and like what it's doing from a kind of creative direction point of view. I think one of the things that's really interesting here is we have like layering of the surreal visuals with stuff that's very kind of socially grounded. Like the descriptions of the characters and the drinks they're drinking are just something you could bump into in the real world. You know, the soju and the mimosa, the fact that the characters are called that, that's all real. The descriptions of like the social situation that the protagonist is in with them is all real. And that layering is very, very interesting to me. Like I said, like very recently I was talking about surrealism in games and dreams and stuff like that when we played the black and white game last week, and how I find it very boring when a game is just surreal and that surrealism isn't being used to do anything that feels meaningful. And that's not really the case here. It feels like the surrealism is being used to create a mood and to make the characters ambiguous so you don't know who they are, but everything that we're seeing here has some anchor in reality. And even like this goofy joke of like turning the blue-eyed Yu-Gi-Oh dragon into a tarot card is doing something with like tying the game into a particular sort of youth subculture of types of people who might hang out and drink these drinks together and know these Yu-Gi-Oh references. You know, it's cool. It feels like it means something, which is a good place to start. And it should be the bare minimum for an art game, but we played an art game last week that was just looked cool but didn't mean anything. Four of Cups. It stands for enlightened centrists. So, there's kind of a joke. I saw someone talking about this on Blue Sky recently, that narrative designers are all into tarot, and if you go to a narrative design conference, like you know, people that make game type stories, everyone has tarot cards in their bag. So I think the reason that this is being presented as fucking enlightened centrist, shut the fuck up, is the Four of Cups is, so the cups are the emotional suit, right? In tarot you have cups of water, which is emotions, wands of fire, which are actions, pentacles or coin are earth, which are like physical or material things, and what's the other one? The other one is air. I can't remember what it is. It's not wands. It's not cups. It's whatever the other one is air, but it stands for the intellect. And 4 is a strong number in the numerology of the tarot. And so the 4 of Cups would be people that are like very kind of, could be a situation where people are like very sort of sure of themselves and emotionally stable about something. So there is a tarot joke here in making the 4 of Cups be the fucking enlightened centrist, shut the fuck up, which I cannot explain in any... oh yeah, the sword. The sword is the air, which is the intellect. Okay, so Judgment is the card that ends the game, I think. Well, that was fun. I'm ready for bed. Get home safe. You'll play without losing to win. So when I do Judgment, it gives that backpedaling thing. The Hanged Man. How do I stop it happening? So I think what it's trying to do narratively is basically as soon as you play the Judgment card, it starts the countdown to end the game, which I don't fully understand. I thought maybe it was like you've messed up the social situation by making some sort of judgment. I don't think this is... Okay, so judgment ends the hangout. It's very confusing that the discard is over the drink because it makes it feel like it's related to the drink, but it's not. Temperance. Okay, we've done that one already. When you drink, the discarded cards go back in the pile. The gringo's fascination with icebreakers will always elude us. Intravenous cringe. You're right, too early to end the hangout. So the judgment card ends the hangout. What's this one? The chariot. That's great. I love how the interface of the art tool is still in these. It's really, really adds so much extra jank to it. That's the Lexus, Soju's family. His now so that he can drive himself to class. Stepping out of it makes me feel twice as disheveled. But if it weren't for the gas-guzzling Joule, it would be a 40-minute walk into the city. Down steep, near impossible in platforms, hills with no sidewalks, following by 30 minutes of bus, half of which runs parallel to our destination, and then all of it in reverse at night in the dark. Justify. So, if you haven't got the subtext, the player character is a woman, or at least a femme person, because we just got a description of how, you know, they don't want to walk so far in their shoes. We did get a trigger warning for coercive dependency. So when we check these guys out, which they seem to be guys, this guy is a bit of a edgelord and possibly misogynist because he deliberately showed us a film where a woman gets shot in the breasts and then laughed at us when we didn't like it. And his dad owns this place, this beautiful place we're in. And the Soju guy seems like a bit of a soft boy, but maybe a bit manipulative with it. So he looks at us like we're a puppy on death row. He's the one with the nice car. We get rides with him places, all of this kind of stuff. Now we're in a situation drinking with these people. It's kind of hinting towards a kind of situation where, you know, there might be some sort of like implication of like you owe these people sex in some way or something like that. That feels like the sort of thing it's building to. And again, this is what I mean when you make one of these surreal art games. Does it actually mean anything underneath? And the thing that's happening here that makes this a very interesting piece is all of the psychedelic aesthetics are being used to obscure the social meaning of the thing. And that means that there is an actual game here. Even if we take away the Uno card interface type thing, which is... it's framed at the beginning of the game as being like, okay, my therapist once told me to treat conversations as a game of Uno. And then we've got the game mechanic come out of that. But what's really happening is we draw the cards and they have a piece of contextual information on, and we use that to build a picture of what does this situation represent. And the thing the situation represents is something unpleasant, but something that probably happens quite a lot in situations like this where you've got like... quote unquote friendship groups with power disparities in. Yeah, it's unnerving, but it feels like it's doing it in aid of talking about something that we don't get talked about in games a lot, and the kind of subtleties of this kind of situation, which is neat. And yeah, the interface is a little bit like Reigns. I'm not sure who pointed that out, but it's cool. The Hanged Man. Distinguished guests, do we ever pretend we're falling. Fake the vertigo that comes with height. Project our penumbra beyond every banister. Bend over the balcony and doze our way down. The Hierophant. That's a great Hierophant if I ever saw one. Really, everything is a bell curve, and you're telling me you're a cisgendered straight man, culturally brainwashed much. It's giving internalized homophobia, coward. Deride. So, I'm not quite sure what playing the cards onto the field means. I seem to be able to stack them for some reason, and I'm not sure why. An asymmetrical and decentralized insurgency is nearly impossible to defend against. So wands being the action suit, the fire suit in tarot. The Star. No matter how horrible you are, I have to believe you're redeemable and lovable and deserving of compassion, because if you're not, then how can I, the biggest monster of them all, be deserving of any of it? I'm not sure I want to say that to these guys, but... Oh! Time to backpedal. Can't take back what we've ever said. I don't understand the condition that ends the game. I think we might have seen all of the cards now, but we'll see. Okay, we got a different ending this time. Afterwards, Soju asks us very genuinely if we're doing okay, but he won't take yes for an answer. He begins texting us every day, calling when we fail to pick up. One afternoon, our midday nap is terrorized by a Soju unzipping our tent jump scare. The more we recede, the more persistent he becomes. We'll never know how he got our parents' number, but within a week, we are flying him, panicked here to help, to check us in, and Soju, well, he has rescued their child. Over time, the three of them begin to talk less to us and more about us, about what this place has done to us, to our legs, our weight, our clothes. Poor, naive, confused us, depressed and helpless. Reflection, we should never have worried him. Ending 2 out of 14. Next time, smile more. So, Soju has got a Jesus complex and gets you committed. Which is nice of him. Thanks, Soju. Oh, I finally got an Uno card. If we don't look at the other side, it's Schrodinger's card. Flip. Dos. Whenever we play board games, our goal wasn't to win. Instead, we played a game on top of the game. Make sure everyone else is enjoying themselves. Our own personal Kobayashi Maru. Admit. So every card is like something we can say in this context or something we can think to take a position on something. So the Chariot, we can justify our relationship with Soju and how he's so nice to us by driving the car, driving us around so we don't have to walk everywhere in our high heels or whatever. Players, gifted child, a savant. And also, earlier in the game, our character thought gringos. So our character is Latina, maybe, I guess, which is why we're now getting the Uno cards in Spanish with the actual words on, which I've never seen. I don't know if they were made especially for this or if that's how they're actually released somewhere. But when I saw DOS, I thought of like disk operating system rather than it being a non-English number. We must read the players at the table. Sore loser, sore winner, try hard, chatterer, insecure, overconfident, play the field, hedge our bets, bluff, even cheat to invisibly assure everyone remains convinced their goals are within reach. Codify. Yeah, it is the Reigns interface where you're trying to stop them going all the way up or all the way down, I think. If you've played Reigns, it's like you're managing a kingdom and there's like 4 bars for religion, military, treasury, and your relationship with the populace. And you lose if any of them go too high or too low because something has become... When it's too low, that group is really angry with you, and when it's too high, they're more powerful than you. So you have to keep them all in the middle, and it's a really neat interface. Can't take back. Okay, so everything that's been placed out here is stuff that we've already said. And then when we rearrange the field and put them down, it triggers them again, because these all happen again when we pick them and move them around. I'm not sure I understand. I don't understand what the different things relate to. I think I made Soju like me too much. Maybe that's what that was. So that's red. So this is what's going to lose the game, is that's too red. Okay, we got the same ending. I hate it when I humor a soft boy and he gets me committed. Oh yeah, you can play them on the different characters. So it's showing you what it will affect either side. So that's going to make his heart go up, and but I don't understand. I don't feel like I understand what the symbols relate to. I could see how the situation is like, maybe heart is like attraction, right? So you're in a situation where you don't want either of them to like you too much. I don't understand the energy, and I don't understand what the person-shaped thing is. So if I put that there, the smaller symbol means it's going to go down, and the big symbol means it's going to go up. So this one, if I put it over there, I mean, they both go up a little bit. Okay, Soju and Mimosa know of each other. They must have something in common. Okay, over there. If I do that over there, he gets really enamored with us. Yeah, the body could be sexual attraction. It could also be like how, because there were certain questions, certain things you could say that were like trying to put them down. So I wondered if the man symbol could be something like that. It's like their sort of self-esteem or something, but it's so cryptic. I mean, it's definitely the sort of thing that if I'd just come across it in the wild, I would have had a quick look through it and then gone, yeah, this is too dense. It really reminds me of Porpentine, who I'm gonna maybe show you something of right at the end, because I think this kind of aesthetic really reminds me of a Porpentine game, and also the sorts of things it's about, which is like the sort of, well, I mean, it's not exactly the same things, but it feels like the combination of the subject matter and the art style is leaning that way. And I think if people find this interesting and have never played a Porpentine Twine, then you're in for a treat in inverted commas, because they're quite disturbing, some of them. Okay, this is the thing where this is like the comment you can make that is basically like, hey bros, let's listen to Tool together. Hey bros, have you considered riding the spiral to its end? I think Mimosa wants to listen to some Tool together, although the energy is flashing over on that side. Let's do it anyway. Uh-oh. Oh no. Ah! Did you hear the sigh? It's the first time I've actually got out of that. So I put it on one side, it made Mimosa's energy go to the bottom. I put it on the other side, it made Soju's heart go to the top. So there's 12 endings, right? And I'm guessing with 12 endings, there's 6 lose states on each side. So the one that we keep getting is where Soju loves us too much, that he gets us committed because he's a horrible Neil Gaiman style soft boy that uses that to manipulate people. So if you make Soju fall in love with you, he wrecks your life by becoming a kind of controlling narcissist and having you committed and like getting your parents on side with him and stuff. There will be a different way of finishing / losing / winning the game for getting each of these bars all the way to the top or the bottom. And all we needed was really that thing that someone in the chat threw in a moment ago that made me realize I need to choose which side to put these on. So there's, you know, I don't want to call them UX problems because, again, we're playing an art game. It's not that kind of thing. But yeah, some stuff is getting lost in how kind of cryptic this thing is to control in the first place, I guess. Over on that side. I love that that's the star card. This guy seems to not like it if we say very like earnest, nice things to him, because he's an edgelord. Juno? Knuno. Uno is a champion of the heavy dose of randomness that swings wildly to remedy this exact problem, but alas, that only takes away our agency, our ability to secretly brace the group for the inevitable fall of that final card. The cold, hard reality that only clear rules can deliver. The final judgment. Lament. On a related note, hated trope, media that steps out of itself, lights a cigarette, turns around its proverbial chair, the soapbox's more patronizing cousin, to sit on it cool style and mansplain its themes and messages. Like, yeah, we got it, Shakespeare. Your DFW style bandana is tone deaf, by the way. Ever think that maybe you could learn something about your own work from us? That we might actually be not only part but the bigger part of your work? Or are you just finding out that we have inner worlds? If so, on behalf of humanity, would you kindly go jack off somewhere else? I was trying to get immersed. Jeez, now where's my ashtray? Well, I am thoroughly called out by the Ono 99 card. Thank you very much. I'm going to give that to Edgelord guy because I feel like he's the guy. This guy over here is the biggest Disco Elysium fan in the room, so he needs that card. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, I can pick the dudes up now as well. What's going on? Why can I pick him up? I'm just going to play random cards until everything calms down. Oh, so many cards that we haven't seen yet. Drink. Make it stop. What's happening? Okay, we might be able to work out what the symbols mean now, though, because this guy's man symbol has gone all the way down. Close calls on interrogation on whether they also fantasize about suicide was existential and personal. One weekend, Mimosa pulls up in his two-seater and bestows upon us an irrefutable duffel bag, chiffon spilled onto the patio tiles. Soon he's quizzing us on names. The prize, his attention to the road. Jägermeister, Caprina, whiskey. A red light ran, searing them into our memory. Unbelievably at our destination are congrats on the contribution to gentrification. Your art bores me. Subtext is greeted with a chorus of laughter. Where have you been hiding this flower? They asked Mimosa. She's much lovelier than you. That night, while handing back the dress, Mimosa tells us he knew we'd kill it out there, but that we're not as clever as we think. He tells us if we're so desperate for their approval, why don't we crash at one of their dad's mansions? He wants us out by the end of the week. If only we had seemed less killer. So, it's basically a love triangle with two different types of douchebag. And Soju is the Neil Gaiman evil softboy type of douchebag, and this guy is your 4chan edgelord, maybe ostensibly kind of dirtbag left. This is the guy that this guy over here. This guy fucking loves Disco Elysium so much. He's made it his whole personality. He loves Fight Club, but you know he needs to tell you how the book is so much better. This guy over here, and this guy's super controlling and probably quite controlled and anally retentive, and this guy is like self-destructive, drink driving. I'm a James Dean rock and roll leather jacket dude type of guy. Nine of Swords. Sorry. Maybe we save that for later. It's funny that I can move them around. Uh-oh. Okay, I want to see what the other ending is anyway, so I'm just going to let it end. I'm going to stop this in a moment. I think this is a really interesting piece. I like the fact that, I mean, obviously it's a little bit clunky, it's hard to interact with, it takes a long time to just work out what you're even doing. I like the fact that these kind of lose states are actually, they're all goals in their own way. If you want to find out all of the 12 ways that this can end, there isn't really like 12 ways of winning, or they're all kind of wins or losses depending on how you look at it. It started today, Mimosa making that face, the little wince before the nervous laugh, the eyes already searching for someone else to rescue him from whatever we'd become mid-sentence. Somehow, every word arrives damp, every apology makes it worse, every joke asks for too much. Even kindness lands wrong, sticky with need, impossible to accept without touching us back. But now he doesn't need a reason, he has a feeling, we are disgusting, and you don't keep sticking your neck out for disgusting. Next time, leave no residue. Next time, practice active listening. I can do better. I don't want to do better with these guys. They seem like D-bags. Anyway, That was good. Had a lot of interesting things in it, and you know, like I said, often when I get sent, if it's a patrons game, I will check it out. But often when I get sent art games through the main thing, I think, well, I can't. It's very hard to do sort of like a show that is ostensibly about game design and then also look at these kind of things where the goal isn't necessarily to give people a good experience. It is to make them think about something. But I think that was great. I think it did a very good job at what it was doing. I liked the fact that it was actually based around some sort of game mechanic rather than just being like a branching text thing. If people liked that and liked the tone of it and you've never played any of Porpentine's Twines, I would really, really recommend you go and check out some of Porpentine's Twine games. The one that I mean, they come with a big stack of warnings in terms of content, but stuff. The one that I really, really liked is let me find out what it's called. With those We Love Alive is a really good sort of psychedelic. I mean, it's a choose your own adventure twine game. There's a part of this one where it sort of encourages you to draw sigils on your arm, which I guess is probably meant to be a thinly veiled self-harm metaphor. But you're like drawing on yourself in the real world while you play the game. It's very, very evocative and dreamy, and it kind of does what that game that we were just playing, Who's Afraid of Uno, does, of like layering up surreal, dreamy, nightmarish, psychedelic imagery with things that are incredibly grounded in the real world. That was partly why that last game reminded me so much of Porpentine, because Porpentine's work has a lot of that in it, of that like we're going to take this very kind of trippy aesthetic, and even though it's done in text, it's the same sort of thing, and kind of reminds me of like if you've ever read like William Burroughs or someone like that, just like the layering up of these kind of psychedelic science fiction looking things with just like very kind of down to earth concerns. Yeah, it's cool. Reigns as a brutally realistic love triangle was interesting concept. Yes, it's a good use of Reigns, and I mean, it didn't. It felt it was a very claustrophobic experience. Let me just see if I can find the itch page for it. It was a very claustrophobic experience because it's like you don't get a sense that any of these outcomes is going to be good. Right? There's not a version of this conversation in Who's Afraid of Uno where you can like really win the game and have a good outcome. It doesn't feel like it anyway. In the screenshots, they've got like more space, so maybe you can actually. Let me just see if we can walk around in it a little bit more. Was Day Drinking a game jam, or was it just the original name of the game? Oh yeah, you can sort of. See, I didn't clock that when I was looking at it before. You can actually turn around and see the car that is the chariot car. The tent is the hermit. After the first time the neighbours complained, I've started setting up my tent in the empty pool. It's below their eye line. Yep. I mean, that's it for today, folks. Thank you for joining. Two games that were disturbing in slightly different ways. I think Flesh Grinding needs to just be a bit more varied, play around with the tactility of what it's doing a little bit more to kind of make you really feel involved in the horror of grinding up those bits of meat that fall from the ceiling, and just more things to put variety in the game. I was very disappointed to get that big 25 cost mysterious looking upgrade that then did nothing. So I'd be interested in playing that again later on. It had a really cool aesthetic. Just felt a little bit too much like it was a true, or like a vanilla incremental, let's say, of just little incremental upgrades to doing a task and no real kind of payoff in terms of what was kind of happening as we did that, and what was changing in the game. And this was called Who's Afraid of Uno? Very interesting art game. Does lots of things that I like. You know, using surrealism to get at a feeling about relationships between people without like making those two anchored in like things that look like real people, I think is a really, really cool use of surrealism. And if you look back at the stream from last week, the black and white game, can't remember its name, but I'll link it in the VOD. I really, really think it always feels like a missed opportunity when people make very visually surreal games that just don't seem to mean anything. And this is completely the opposite of that. This is not that at all. This is using surrealism to like go, hey, this is not just like a situation about these specific characters. This is like a situation that could occur like over and over again hundreds of times, and probably is. And the strange juxtaposition of like the description of these guys that are very clearly, I don't know if they're real people that the developer knew or if they're just modeled on situations they've heard of, but these are like real kind of types of guy, and like framing them in this, you know, like we're watching a, you know, sort of ultra pop video on acid is a really cool way of like making the kind of dreamy stuff and the socially realistic stuff interact in a way that kind of makes you think about the subject matter a lot more than if you were just like playing a visual novel and experiencing these characters as if they were just parts of a story. I think there's something especially sort of impactful and slightly more disturbing about doing it this way. And yeah, it's a cool project. And I think if the dev ever wanted to take this set of mechanics and turn it into a non-art game, it feels like there are some legs to that. But I think they're kind of the story meaning of this particular situation makes it quite a special thing on its own. So yeah, don't really have anything specific to say about that beyond that. But yeah, catch up with you soon. I'll be doing another stream day after tomorrow, I think. And then Friday I will start streaming the games from Collab Jam. We've had over 100 entries. I'm probably going to need to do 3 or 4 streams to get through them all. But I do want to play them all. So yeah, come back Thursday, Friday, be doing some more stuff. And if you're already a Patreon member, then I will see some of you in the Discord. I am just about to finish a blog post today. I'm going to put a blog post up about AI art and why I still don't like it and why the reasons are changing. And I'm also sorting out that work experience stuff. So I know a few developers who are patrons signed up for this scheme we've got where I've got a few local colleges where their students are going to like, for their work experience, instead of just randomly going to a supermarket or something, they're going to help you out with stuff on your games, whether it's sound design or marketing or little odd jobs that you might need some help with. I'm going to go and sort out some of the admin around that. I hope we can get that going as a yearly thing. It would be really, really cool to be able to give like 30 or 40 sort of teenagers local to me work experience working on an indie game and doing actual work rather than just going and making tea in an office or getting stuck in a random supermarket or something like that. So I'm going to go off and try and make some progress on the admin for that. And I will see you all later on. And Towers is in the chat. You know what? Also, I really, really appreciate that you weren't jumping in explaining things then. Because the first dev was doing that with their game, and it meant that I didn't get a chance to get confused. And I think when you're watching people playtest your games, you need to let people get confused and puzzle it out. So I'm very pleased that you were just sort of lurking then. I didn't know you were even here. Thank you, folks. Have a good rest of the week if I don't see you on another stream.